With us. My name is Adam, one of the pastors here on staff, and I just get this incredible opportunity to come and to speak with you this morning as we continue in our series called Divine Direction. But before we get into that, we have kind of a little bit of an announcement we want to make, just kind of an unveiling of sorts. And many of you are here as we walk through the series called Next, as we discovered what does God have next for us as a church. We walk through experiencing life, living in community, discovering your purpose, and making a difference. And as we were working through all of that, we realized that maybe God is putting on our heart something bigger, and we wanted to reevaluate kind of our brand, our look, our icon, all that kind of fun stuff that goes along with vision. And as you know, if you're part of that series, our mission statement is we are committed to growing together with Jesus to make a difference in our city. We are committed to growing together with Jesus to make a difference in our city. And God has put a love for our city on our heart. And ever since the beginning of this church, ever since the beginning, our icon or our look has always been represented by the heart for Jesus, a heart for people, and a heart for our city. And over the many years, that icon has looked different. It's changed, it's morphed a little bit, but the essence of it is the heart. And as a couple years ago, as Pastor Jason led our heart for our city, for the city of Ottawa, for renewing Yao, you heard that phrase, is that we realized actually the city of Ottawa actually looks like a heart, doesn't it? It looks like a heart. And so we started using that heart because it just expands our heart for our city, for the heart of Ottawa. We want to reach Ottawa. But as God has been empowering Pastor Jason and leading him, God has given us a vision, not just for our city, but for other cities. And we just want our heart to expand and be open to whatever God says yes to. Wherever God leads, we want our heart to say yes. And so we started asking the question, well, is there a way that we can embrace the heart and embrace the idea of the city, our city, and actually merge them into one? Because right now we see there's multiple icons rolling around, and together with the designer we came up with this new icon that represents our city, that it represents our heart for one another, our heart for reaching our city. And so we are excited about this, and you're going to see this roll out across this summer on all of our locations and all of our print material. But here's what we're about. We're about a heart for people. We're about a heart for Jesus, and we're a heart for our city. And our city may be Cornwall. Our city may be in Uganda somewhere. Wherever our city is, we want our heart to grow for our city. And so are you excited about that? All right, you're really quiet. But we're excited about that, and you're going to see that roll on. But we are committed to growing together with Jesus to make a difference in our city. And you may be from Gatineau, but your city, that's your city. Wherever you are planted, we want to make a difference. Well, we're going to continue on in our series here. I'm old school. I got paper up here. Pastor Jason has this little iPad, and it's all good. My eyes are bad. I need paper. Old school. Love it. I think it's more holy, though, you know. I got the real Bible up here, you know. I got notes and highlights. It's all good. Man, I'm not going to open it because I wrote it all in my notes. But it's here to make me look spiritual. But I'm going to put it under here right now. But hey, I'm glad you're here. We're in our series called Divine Direction. How many of you guys bought the book? Any of you buy the book or reading through the book? Amazing. I want to encourage you, as Pastor Laurie said, to go through the devotional. Read through the devotional. It's amazing. I do at least one plan. I'm always committed to a plan through YouVersion. I just love how they're there. They're accessible. You can set up reminders. They're short. They get you thinking. They realign your day. You can set it up right in the morning and just take 10 minutes, take 5 minutes, read through it, realign your thoughts, get you focused on the day. But you can do that Divine Direction one there from Pastor Craig Rochelle. It is fantastic. Well, the central theme throughout the series, and if you're following along with the book, is that the decisions we make today determine the stories we tell tomorrow. The decisions we make today determine the stories that we tell tomorrow. And so week one, we talked about the decisions to start, right? The decisions to start something. We talked last week about the decisions to stop some things, right? There are some things in life we need to start. We need to kind of get into a new routine. I started this week my 21-day fix, Beachbody 21-day fix. A little bit late, but I'm starting, all right? If you didn't start yesterday, the best day to start is today, right? So I'm starting today. Well, I started on Monday because everything starts on Monday. You know, Friday night, you're eating that pizza, you're eating the bag of chips, but it'll start on Monday, right? Monday, everything starts. Everything starts on Monday, right? And so we started on Monday. It's been great. And then all week I was sore, and I didn't want to do it, but I committed to doing it. And other things, there are things that we need to stop. We're like, okay, I need to stop eating chips at 10 o'clock at night. That does not work, right? So there's things we need to stop. And I know there are some bigger decisions we need to stop. But today, we're going to talk about the decision to stay. The decision to stay when it'd be easier to go. In his book, Craig Rochelle tells a story about a man standing in front of what seems to be 100 anniversary cards, feeling overwhelmed and trying to find the right one. Any man ever have that sense of that feeling? You're standing in front of all these cards. You have no clue what to pick. You just kind of look like you feel like an idiot. You feel like everyone is looking at you saying, you have no idea what you're doing, do you? And you're like, no, I do not. I do not. Anyway, well, he's standing there, he's looking, he's feeling overwhelmed. He's looking for something serious, but not too sappy, something lighthearted, but not silly. You see, he hated picking out an anniversary card for this very reason. They weren't newlyweds anymore, far from it, but they weren't empty nesters either. They weren't ready to retire. It had taken them months to get back to the point where they were even comfortable being alone together. He thought back after this past year and wondered if they made the right decision and reflected on what the perfect card might say. He said, hey, honey, happy anniversary. We made it another year. I wasn't sure if we were going to pull through what happened last summer, but I'm grateful you were willing to stay and work it out. It would have been so much easier for you to blame me and just leave. I know that a lot of wives would assume divorce would be the only solution. And I know that I know I've said it a million times, but I'm sorry that I hurt you. We don't need to rehash the past, but I want you to know how much I love you, how much I appreciate your willingness to talk things out and to cry together, to pray together, how much your forgiveness means to me. No other one has ever loved me the way you love me, so thank you for staying, for not giving up on our marriage and our family. I love you. Happy anniversary. He casually wiped a tear from his eyes. He looked around to see if anyone noticed, as if anyone could even know what he was thinking and feeling right then. And an older lady a few feet away laughed out loud as card she was holding in her hand and glanced up to look at him as if she was waiting for a response for him to laugh too. It's silly, she said to him. Or maybe even no one in particular. But I think my husband will like it. She leaned toward him, so he realized she must have been talking to him after all. It's our anniversary, 48 years. Can you believe it? He smiled and nodded. My wife and I are celebrating an anniversary too. Good for you, she said. You didn't ask, but I'm going to tell you what the secret to a good marriage is. He stepped in a little bit closer and noticed a sparkle in her eye. She said, mostly, it's just being willing to stick it out. She said, it's choosing to stay when it'd be easier to go. He nodded in agreement as she walked away around the corner into the next aisle, and he wondered if she was an angel or just some crazy old lady. But it didn't matter. He grinned. He grabbed a blank card with plenty of space to write on his own anniversary message and headed toward the checkout line. See, there are moments in life, whether it's marriage, friendships, maybe it's a job or school, or even our church, even church. There are moments when everything inside of you just wants to run, right? To go back, to quit, to turn away. After all, it would be so much easier. It'd be so much easier. But instead, you muster this resolve to do something powerful, to do something even unexpected, and you decide to stay. You know, William Shakespeare articulated this resolve this way. He says, I have more care to stay than will to go. I have more care to stay than will to go. Most, if not all of us here today have experienced this type of crossroad moments. Some of them are flip the coin kind of moments, like do we stay or do we go? That it really doesn't matter. But other ones are these big decisions. They're deep decisions. They have a domino effect that reaches beyond ourselves. They impact our families. They impact our kids. They impact our communities. There's decisions that we make. And while staying isn't always the only thing to do, sometimes it is the right thing to do. Staying isn't always the only thing to do, but sometimes it is the right thing to do. Should I stay or should I go? Many of you, maybe some of you today are in this moment. You're in a season, you're asking yourself, should I stay or should I go? And you're thinking about your work. Should I stay or should I go? You're thinking about this church maybe. Should I stay or should I go? You're thinking about a friendship. Should I stay or should I go? You're thinking about your relationship with God. Should I stay or should I go? You're thinking about your marriage. Should I stay or should I go? Here's a couple things I need you to understand before we go any further. Is that I've begun to realize that there's a pressure of quitting happens in these certain times, okay? There's certain moments, there's certain experiences that happen where this pressure of quitting actually rises to the surface. It happens after a failure, doesn't it? after you failed at something, after you drop the ball, this pressure of, I'm going to quit. I'll just quit. It's easy to quit. I failed anyway. I'm not maybe that good at it. I'm just going to quit. And so that pressure comes up. The pressure of leaving comes. Or after vows have been broken, maybe you just broke the vows. Maybe you dropped the ball. And instead of coming clean, instead of going through the process of restoration, you just, I'm just going to quit. I'm just going to quit. Or maybe your capacity is being enlarged. Maybe you're in your workplace and they're asking you to do more. They're expanding your capacity and it's becoming overwhelming. And you're like, I just don't want to do this. I can't do this. I want to quit. I want to stop. I'm not ready for this. Or maybe God is leading you to a new place that's difficult and he's asking you to step out in faith and you're not 100% sure your faith is able to sustain you. And so you just say, I'm just going to stay back here. I'm just going to quit. Or maybe you're standing at a crossroad where all you see is two options and you're like, I don't even like option A or option B and I can't even see a third option. And maybe it's just better just to quit all together. You see, here's a couple of things again I want you to understand before we get further. This is so crucial as I've been thinking through it, is that staying doesn't mean you're stuck. Okay? Choosing to stay does not mean you're stuck. And the enemy is going to want to let you know and make you believe that by choosing to stay, you're selling out. And you're giving in. Staying does not mean you're stuck. Staying does not mean nothing will change or can change. Staying doesn't mean that nothing will get better. Staying doesn't mean you're selling out or you're giving in. It doesn't mean that. Staying means that regardless of what happens, I am not going anywhere. It means that I'm not going anywhere. I'm choosing to do the right thing. I'm going to stay. And many of us here today, myself included, have mistaken staying for embracing the notion of being stuck. And it's beyond that. Because staying, there's a choice that comes into that plants you, that gives you the confidence in who God is. Many times, most of the time even, it won't even seem logical to stay. Sometimes the best decisions go against cultural norms or cultural wisdom and trends. And that's why it's important to listen to God, seek God first, trust in Him above everyone else. You can't listen to your coworkers or your neighbors or your boss or sometimes even your spouse. Yes, I said that. Sometimes you have to allow God's voice to be the loudest voice in your mind. Jesus said it this way in John 15. He says, I am the vine, and you are the branches. Whoever abides, whoever stays in me, and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. From apart from me, you can do nothing. You know how awesome that is? Just to embrace that I'm a branch. I'm a branch on the low side of the tree because I'm a little bit thicker, right? But I'm a branch. You know, they get a little thinner as they get to the top. But I'm a low-bearing branch. Okay, that's my cross to bear. I got to deal with that. But but I'm a branch. And my responsibility is just to bear fruit. I just got to pull from the vine. I got to stay connected to the source. Stay connected to Him. Stay connected to Him. Listen to Him. Hear from Him. Trust in Him. Rely on Him. And I can bear fruit. We're going to look at a story in the Old Testament, in the book of Ruth. Ruth is about 4 chapters long. It's right before 1 Samuel, if you want to flip to it in your Bibles, right after Judges. And we got this story, what we're going to talk about, that is it's an incredible story about the staying power, Naomi is the central character. She's one of the characters in the story. Naomi is from Bethlehem in Judea, and her and her husband, there's a famine in Jerusalem. There's a famine in Judah, and so they flee from Bethlehem to go to Moab, where they can look for a new life and they can survive. So this family of 4, Naomi, her husband, and 2 children, they go off to Moab, and they plant themselves in Moab, and everything is great, and all of a sudden her husband dies. And so now Naomi is here with 2 sons, and eventually their 2 sons marry these Moabite women, Orpah, and Ruth, right? So they're marrying these Ruth, everything is good, but about 10 years after Naomi's husband passes away, she goes through this tragedy of losing both of her sons. And so now you have these 3 women. You have Naomi, you have Orpah, and you have Ruth, who are left as widows. These 3 widows in a time where being a widow wasn't a great thing to be. And so they're stuck here. They're feeling stuck. They're feeling like they're trapped, and so they have to make some decisions. And so at this time, being a widow without children was pretty much without hope or opportunity. And so women weren't allowed to work. They couldn't just go to the nearest Starbucks and grab a job as a barista, so they had to depend on their husbands or their sons for their welfare, for their income, for their livelihood. And so Naomi's only option was to become a beggar, a position even lower than a slave. And so she knew that there wasn't a lot of hope for her in Moab, so she thought maybe, she heard that the famine in Judah had lifted, and she thought maybe I can go back to Judah, and maybe I can find some mercy, and I can get some, I can find some refuge and some extended family members, so I'm going to go back. And so but she couldn't promise that she could take the girls. She couldn't promise anything to the girls. And so she encourages them to leave and return to their home for a fresh start. They were young enough that they could find new husbands and even better, a more sense of secure life. They were young enough they could start again. And so while Orpah, man, how many people do that when you read it? Orpah agreed, and she took Naomi's blessing to leave. Ruth decided to stay. And many of us are familiar with this story. She decided to stay. She was completely unclear about the future, but she was secure. And she was certain, rather, in one thing, that she wasn't going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. And there was this little dialogue. If you want to read it for yourself, you can read through this story pretty quickly. But there's this dialogue back and forth where Naomi's just really encouraging him. Go, trust me. There's no hope with me. There's no security with me. I love you, and I thank you that you're so faithful, but you need to go. And Orpah, she originally wanted to go, but she agreed and she went. But Ruth just said, no, I'm going. I'm staying with you. And we pick up in her story in Ruth 1:15, it says, and Naomi said, and she said, see, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said this. She said, do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, there I will go. And where you lodge, I will lodge. And your people shall be my people. And your God, my God. And when you die, where you die, I will die. And there I will be buried. And may the Lord do to me, or more also, if anything but death parts me from you. And Naomi saw that she was determined to go. She said no more. How many mother-in-laws would just love to hear that from their daughter-in-law? That kind of commitment to the family. Awkward moments. All right, here we go. Everyone's like diverting eye contact, right? Like, don't look. But did you catch it? Did you catch this central, this one thing, this anchoring point, this thing that you need absolute clarity on if you're going to have the staying power when you face through trial? It's 4 words. Ruth said to Naomi, your God, my God. We'll add 2 more just to make sense. Your God will be my God. See, now, Ruth wasn't just leaving her homeland. She was leaving her religion, the gods of her, she was leaving everything. She was embracing the God of Israel. She was embracing Yahweh at the time, right? She was embracing a whole new understanding, and she would put her faith in God. Staying power is trusting that God is greater than whatever you're currently facing. Not just believing that God is great, but trusting God is great. And I've learned that there's a big difference between the two. There's a big difference between believing and trusting. Believing and trusting. About a year ago, before we moved here, we were at that place. We were at that place where we're praying, do we stay or do we go? Do we stay or do we go? And we realized, my wife and I, Wendy, that we believe that God is faithful. We believe that God can take care of us, but we were forced in that moment to trust that He will. And I tell you what, it was a humbling moment because I realized there's a big difference between believing and trusting. When you leave your job without a job, you're putting a lot of trust that God's going to provide for the next week. And that's what we did. Believing is different than trust. See, belief is rooted in knowledge, but trust is established through experience. Belief is rooted in knowledge. You can read about it. You can digest that. You can hear. But trust is established through experience. I can believe that you are a good person, but until I experience that you're a good person, I'm not going to trust you as a good person. Right? Belief and trust are different. Yes, they come from the same place, but trust is the fruit of belief rooted. Trusting that God can instead of leaving and starting again. Trusting that God is instead of trusting a false God. Trusting that God will instead of following the crowd. Ruth went into this moment, eyes wide open. She saw this immense challenge of the situation, but she made a choice. Turn to your neighbor and say, made a choice. She made a choice. She made a choice to place her trust in God. Here's the thing. Choosing to trust Jesus, choosing to stay rather, is choosing to trust Jesus in the midst of what you're going through. And here's what I've learned. You know what the difference between being staying and being stuck is? A choice. The difference between feeling like I'm staying versus I'm stuck is a choice. If you feel stuck, it's because you don't feel it. You're not making a choice to stay rooted. You feel like you're stuck. But to stay is to realign our heart under God and say, God, I choose. I choose to stay. I choose to bring my best. I choose, oh God, I choose to look for the best. I choose to follow after you. I choose to hear your voice. I choose in this situation, though it's hard, though it's not easy, though I want to quit, God, I choose to stay. That is the difference between staying and being stuck. It doesn't change your proximity. It doesn't change where your footing is. It's your heart. It's your attitude. It's your approach. It's your willingness to trust Jesus. Choosing to stay is choosing to trust Jesus in the midst of what you're going through. My pages are all over the place, but God is good anyway. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I'm not saying that there aren't times where you need to go, but I'm learning that there are times where you need to stay, aren't there? There are times where you need to choose to stay. There are times where you need to lock your feet in and you need to make a decision to stay. And it's hard, if not impossible, to stay if our eyes are fixed on others. If our eyes are fixed on outcomes, or if our eyes are fixed on opportunities, if we're looking at others, if we're looking at outcomes, if we're looking at opportunities, and we're comparing ourselves to other people, it isn't possible to stay rooted. It isn't possible to make the right choice. It is. But we need to fix our eyes on Jesus. Staying means fixing our eyes on Jesus. It's looking to Him above all others. In Hebrews 12, it says this, 1-3, therefore, since we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin that clings so closely. And let us run with endurance the race that is set out for us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. For the joy that was set before Him, He endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of God. Consider Him who endured such sin from sinners, such hostility against Himself, so that you may not grow weary and faint-hearted. You see, the night that Jesus was betrayed, he was in the garden. He was praying to the Father, desperately looking for another way. Desperately looking for another way to redeem humanity. Not wanting to die on the cross because it was going to be hard. It was going to be painful. He knew he knew everything that he was going into. And so he prayed, is there any way? Is there any way? Many of us have prayed this. God, is there any other way to do this? Lead me, direct me, show me if there's any other way. I don't want to do this. I don't want to stay. I want a new job. I don't want to stay here. I'm not feeling it with my marriage. God, it's not easy. I don't want to stay. We're different. We are so different. God, I don't want to stay. If there's any other way. And he's praying, but then he says this. He says, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. Not my will, but thine be done. I pray that our prayer today would, as we face hard things, when it's not going to be easy, that would be our prayer. God, not my will, but your will be done today. God, your will be done in my life. God, your will be done in this situation. God, I'm going to choose. If you're calling me to stay, God, I'm going to choose to stay. I'm not going to feel stuck, but I'm going to make a decision to stay. I pray, and I know it's not going to be easy. Maybe if some of you are what the things you're walking through, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's hard. Maybe it's not easy to forgive that person. It's not easy to mend that relationship. It's not easy to go back to a job or go back to a place of employment that you don't like, or you don't feel valued, or you don't feel like that you feel appreciated. But maybe God's calling you to stay because He's planted you there. But like Jesus, maybe catch a glimpse of the bigger picture and choose to stay, even when it would be easier to leave. Even when it'd be easier to leave. One of the practical ways over the past, actually from Pastor Craig Rochelle, I love him. He's the one who wrote Divine Direction. I was listening to one of his podcasts, and he was talking about how do we just keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. And he talked about these personal declarations that he reads over himself. And I started thinking, that's amazing. And so about a year ago, I started doing the same thing. I got together and I wrote my own personal declarations. And every morning when I wake up, I read these over myself. There's about 20 of them. I'm just going to read about 10 of them today. Because I think there's a real practical step. Sometimes it's just a real practical step of realigning my heart with God's heart, realigning my emotions with God's kingdom, with God's will. And sometimes my emotions want to lead God versus God lead me. And this allows me to just realign, refocus. And here's just a couple of them that help me keep focused, that remind me that God's in control, to stay rooted, to stay faithful, to stay committed. Here are a couple of them. One, I'm a sinner saved by grace. Christ loves me because of who he is and not because what I have, can, or will do. Jesus is first in my life, and I exist to serve and glorify him. I am disciplined. Christ in me is stronger than the wrong desires in me. My words, my thoughts, my imaginations are under the power of Christ, and I take all thoughts captive and make them obedient to Christ. I am creative, innovative, driven, focused, and blessed beyond measure because of the Holy Spirit dwells within me. I wake up with purpose, direction, and meaning every day of my life. Pain is my friend. I rejoice in suffering because Christ suffered for me. I'm not a victim of circumstance, but I am gifted to create. I'm gifted to lead, and I'm gifted to create and lead and change circumstances for what they are to what they could be. I am victorious. I can do all things through Christ, for Christ, because of Christ, and his power at work in me. And the world and those within my reach will be different and be better because I serve Jesus today. And that's just a couple of them that I read over myself every morning. I remind myself whose I am. I recite who I am. And I remind myself why I wake up, what this day is for. It's not just about going to work. It's not just about collecting a paycheck. It's not just about coaching my boys' Little League team. There's something bigger that I am doing. There's something greater that I'm a part of. And if I choose to stay, it means because God has something here for me to do. And I need to be eyes wide open towards that. Is it easy? No. Are there days you want to quit? Absolutely. But is God working? You bet he is. And if I'm allowing myself, if I avail myself to allow him to use me despite of how I feel, despite of what I want to do, then God can do amazing things. God can do amazing things. In moments where you're tempted to quit and to make emotional decisions that determines my next steps, I stop and I realign myself to what God's word is and God's promise. From there, you make the decision based on obedience on what to do, not emotion. In his book, Divine Direction, Craig Rochelle asks us to consider an important question when we're at these crossroad type moments in our life. And he asks us to consider this. He says, what does God want you to want? What does God want you to want? Oh, you might be unclear about a lot of things, but what's the one thing that he's asking you to pursue where you are? In what area of your life does God want you to stay the course so you can tell a story that he wants to tell through your life? You see, here's what I know is true, is that a breakthrough in one area has a powerful effect in another. So it might not be about a diploma, but about finishing what you start. It may not be about the piece of paper, but about finishing what you start. It may not be about fixing the other person, but allowing God to change you. It may not be about finally having a reason to leave, but embracing the opportunity to forgive. You see, for Ruth, she had this breakthrough moment when she's staying with Naomi. And if you read through the story, you understand all the different dynamics of it. But here's a short look. In looking for food, they're homeless, right? They're beggars. They have no source of income, so now they're looking for food. And so Ruth goes out to the threshing field. When the farmers are out, they're threshing the barley, and she goes on behind them, and she's just picking up the scraps. She's picking up the leftovers. She's gathering food amongst herself, and she's there picking up the leftovers. And one day Boaz, who was the owner of this land, he's the owner. He's well off. He's a man who owns the field. He sees what she's doing, and he has compassion on her. And he gives her permission not only to pick the food, not only does he tell his farmers just to drop a few things along the way, but he tells her, you can come and hang out with my slaves, which is a step up, and just drink from my well. If you're thirsty, you can drink. Have what you need. Take what you need. He's blessing her. He gives her stuff. He sees something different in her, and he responds. We read this story in Ruth 2. He says this. He says, but Boaz answered her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me. and how you left your father and mother and your native land and have come to the people where you did not know before, the Lord repay you for what you have done. A full reward it be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, whose wings you have come to take refuge. He sees her faithfulness. He sees her obedience. He sees her decision to stay when it would be easier to go. He sees not only that, but he sees her attitude towards choosing to stay and embracing this situation. And here's what we need to understand is that when we walk in obedience, it's God's responsibility for the outcome. When you walk in obedience, when you choose to walk in obedience, it's God's responsibility for the outcome. I'm not responsible for what happens next. I'm only responsible for what God has called me to do today. I'm responsible to walk in obedience. I'm responsible to walk in faith, and obedience is God's responsibility for the outcome. Don't take the pressure off yourself. It's not your responsibility, it's His. Your responsibility and my responsibility is when we choose to stay, to walk in obedience with what He's asking me to do. Every day, to walk in obedience. See, Boaz ends up marrying Ruth, and they have a son named Obed, who's actually the father of Jesse, who's the father of David. Therefore, Jesus is actually from the lineage of Ruth, a Moabite, who chose to stay when it had been easier to go. Not only that, Ruth is one of only 2 women in the entire history of the Bible who's got a book of the Bible named after her, Ruth and Esther. Something unheard of. But God elevated, God honored, God empowered, God touched Ruth when she walked in obedience. She made a decision to stay when it would be easier to go. Ruth didn't stay because she thought it might be something in it for her. She didn't stay because she was hoping that God would bless her somehow. No, she stayed because it was the right thing to do. She felt that God was calling her and leading her to stay. And that's why God blessed her. So what does this mean for us today? Well, here's the thing. I do believe that there are times when you need to walk away. We're going to talk about that more next week, the decision to go when it would be easier to stay. But before you decide, you really need to ask yourself, am I choosing to give up because it's the right thing? Or because just leaving is the easier thing? You have to ask yourself that honest question. Is it the right thing, or is it just the easy thing? Maybe you're a college student right now. Maybe you're in college and you're thinking to yourself, man, I'm not going to make it. This is too expensive. I just finished a year. Man, it was a fortune. It was too expensive. Maybe it was too much work. It was just hard to do. I didn't expect it to be so hard. And I think I'm just going to quit. I think I'm just going to go be a manager at McDonald's. You know, they make a good salary, good benefits. Well, I'm just going to go do that. But if God is speaking to you and you hear that still small voice telling you you're not a quitter, you're a finisher, then can I ask you to put your blinders on? Can you get a second job and take that one step at a time? Maybe turn that 4-year degree into a 7.5-year degree, one class at a time, one semester at a time, one summer class at a time, and you did one step at a time, and all of a sudden, in 7.5 years ago, I know a guy who did that, 8.5 years of college for a 4-year degree, but he's committed to going through it. But now, years later, he's able to get a job that he wasn't able to get if he didn't have that degree. And his story looks totally different. He says, I thought I was going to quit. I didn't think I was going to make it, but I chose to stay. And sure, my path looked a little bit different than somebody else, but I committed to it. I stayed. I committed. I stuck through it. And now I get to reap the benefits of that faithfulness to stay when it had been easier to leave. Maybe something happened to you at church and you're unhappy anymore. Yes, I went there. Maybe you don't even like it anymore. Maybe something happened. Maybe someone hurt you. Maybe someone did something really unchristian-like and changed your faith. It challenged your faith. And you're thinking, man, these Christians, really, they're all hypocrites. Whatever. I'm just going to do church on my own. I'm just going to follow Jesus on my own. I don't need to go to church. I don't need to be here. I don't need anybody else. I'm just going to do this on my own. I mean, someone in church, and someone once said that church would be great if there were no people. The problem is that people are the church. And as soon as you find a perfect church, don't go there because you're going to screw it up. There is no perfect church. We're all a bunch of imperfect people just trying desperately to reflect the grace and love of Jesus every day we can. We're fixing our eyes on Jesus. And one day, maybe you say, I'm going to decide to stick it out. And I'm going to commit to staying. And I'm going to reconcile myself with that person. I'm going to do to them what Christ has done for me. And I'm going to forgive them. Heaven forbid the day that we don't release the forgiveness but expect God to forgive us. and we forgive one another, and we work through reconciliation, and all of a sudden 10 years later now we're in a place that we've never experienced spiritually, and we're being a part of something that's making a difference in our community. And not only going to church, we are the church, and we're impacting our communities and our world because of the gospel of grace and what God has done in us. It's not about me, it's about Him and His work in me. Or maybe it's more serious than that, and maybe you've been trying to come to terms with God, and something happened that you just don't understand, and something you don't like, and ever since you've been crying out to God, couldn't you have stopped this? Why did you let this happen? I don't understand. I don't even know if I love you anymore. And all while your story is like so many others, you just at that point just choose to walk away. And many of us in this room know people like that who just couldn't come to grips with something that happened, and they couldn't reconcile their emotions with God, and they just chose to walk away. Not that they just walk away, they just walked away from God. I don't need Him anymore. It breaks my heart, and I'm sure it breaks your heart. But maybe your decision is to stay. Maybe you just go against all odds and say, God, I don't know, I don't understand, I'm not even sure I like you right now, but I'm committed to following after you. And after some time has passed, maybe you look back, reflecting on your story, and you'll realize that even though you didn't know at the time, God was using your story, that very thing that you hated, to change and transform your life. And what the enemy meant for evil, God somehow used for good, and now you're telling your story, using your story to help others who are struggling and through the same issues and heartaches that you faced. Or maybe you're here and it's a relationship. Or even more, maybe it's a marriage. And what once was is no longer, and every day feels like a battle just to get through. Now let me just say this real quick. Past mistakes are past mistakes, and we can't go back and change the past. But I believe that there are situations you need to leave. If you're in a place that you're being abused, you're not a punching bag. You need to get out. You need to get help. You need to God help you, and you need to separate yourself from that situation and pray that God will bring help and restore. But you need to get out. Don't stay in that situation. We're not telling you to stay there. But what I am saying is that our society says this and sells us this lie that I'm just not happy anymore. I just don't love her anymore. We just lost our spark. And you know that girl at work, she's pretty cute. She laughs at my jokes. She thinks I'm funny. I'm not funny, but she laughs at me, jokes, and she's nice to me. She's a lot nicer than my wife was when I left the house this morning. And the grass is greener on the other side. And we start thinking to ourselves that it would just be easier if we left, if we jumped into another relationship, or if we just stayed on our own. But maybe God wants you to stay, even though it's not easy, and even though you don't feel it right now. But maybe one day your story could be this. Maybe it was really hard. It was really hard. And we hated each other at times, and we wanted to murder one another, but we didn't believe in murder, so we just secretly prayed the other one would die. Come on. Jesus is in the room right now. But we secretly prayed, and we weren't sure we were going to make it through. We didn't think we were going to last, but we trusted God, and we stayed. We stayed. We slept in different rooms for a season, but we stayed. We sought counseling, and we prayed, and we got into a life group who encouraged us, and we put our marriage back together, and today our family is together. We are flawed, yes, but we are full of faith. We're full of forgiveness because we chose to stay when it would have been easier to leave. Maybe you've been really faithful. Maybe you're remaining faithful in everything you've been doing for a long time, but you still feel stuck in that boring job. You feel like a failure. You're stuck in raising your kids. You feel like a failure. Maybe you've been stuck in the same boring marriage and you feel like a 20-year failure. But can I tell you this, is that sometimes the greatest act of faith is faithfulness. The greatest act of faith is faithfulness, is saying, I'm deciding to stay. I'm not going to give up. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. I was in a moment once in my life a couple years ago when I wasn't sure what was going on. I was frustrated. I came home defeated every day. And it was you know those moments where you feel like that and it's all over your face. You can't hide it anymore. It's building up so much that it just shows you everything. Coming home, and my son Hunter was playing hockey on the street. He was just like road hockey. It's all he does. And all of a sudden he turned to me. He said, "Dad, look at this." And he had TTLT. Trust. Yeah, TITLE. That's what it is. TITLE. I was like, "What's that?" And he says, "Trust in the Lord." He had it taped on his hockey stick, and I think he just saw it because maybe another hockey player put it on their hockey stick. I wasn't sure what he saw. But in that moment, it was like, you ever get those just like a punch in the face from God? He just kind of, all of a sudden, you just see things in a different way. In that moment, I just realized that God says in Proverbs, says, trust the Lord with all your heart. And do not lean on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. When we trust in him. So when you're tempted to walk away, make sure you seek God first, because you never know what he might do if you have the courage to stay. Can we stand our feet across this place this morning? I just want you to close your eyes. We're going to sing in a moment. We're just going to sing as we seal this into our hearts. But I don't know what you're running through. I don't know what moment, what season, what situation you are in right now. I don't know the battle that is raging inside of your mind and your heart right now. But here's what I want you to know, is that God is faithful. God is faithful. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. He will never let you down. And when you choose to put your trust in him, it is a sure thing. It may not be an easy thing. The right thing doesn't always mean the easy thing, but the right thing equals the right thing. And one day, no matter, you will look back and you will see God's faithfulness evidenced in your life. And you will build that trust that is rooted, that is established through experience. So Father, I just pray for one in this room right now, Lord, I pray that as we sing this song, God, that you are good. As we sing this song, as we declare this song, God, that something in our heart will respond to you again. And God, that you would secure us again, that God, we would make that choice to stay, that we would not feel stuck, but God, that choice would root us in and we would stay the course. And you would give us the courage, the steadfastness, the patience, the grace, the love to stay. Wouldn't it be easier to go? God, we love you. We put our trust in you this morning. In your name we pray. Amen.